I was 28 when I thought my life had finally found peace. I had a stable job, a loving wife, and a home that echoed with laughter every evening. We weren't perfect, but we were comfortable. She'd make tea for me after work, ask how my day went, and I'd respond with the usual, just busy. But slowly, something began to fade. Our talks became shorter, her smile more tired, and I convinced myself it was just routine, that all marriages eventually settle into quiet companionship. But somewhere deep down, I missed the spark, the feeling of being truly seen. My wife was always kind, grounded, and patient. She loved in silence, the kind that doesn't demand attention. I, on the other hand, started craving validation I couldn't explain. Work was stressful, deadlines endless, and she was often too exhausted to notice the restlessness brewing inside me. I began to feel invisible, though she was still right there. It wasn't her fault, and even then, I knew it. But knowing doesn't stop the loneliness, it only makes it harder to admit. Then one day, during a new project, I met her, Maya. She was confident, quick-witted, and laughed easily. She noticed the little things most people ignored. If I looked tired, she'd say, "Rough night," with a smile that felt like concern. It was harmless at first, just small talk between colleagues. But it started giving me something I hadn't felt in years, the tension. I'd catch myself checking my phone for her messages, finding reasons to stop by her desk. Every conversation with her felt effortless, like stepping into sunlight after a long winter. I told myself it was nothing. Just friendship. Just someone who understood the pressure I was under. But it wasn't the truth. Deep down, I liked how she made me feel, wanted, seen, interesting again. My wife's love had become a quiet rhythm I took for granted, while Maya's presence was new, unpredictable, exciting. The contrast grew sharper every day. One evening, when my wife fell asleep early, I found myself scrolling through my chats, rereading Maya's messages, smiling at her jokes. That small thrill of guilt mixed with comfort became addictive. The emotional line blurred before I even noticed. It didn't start with desire, it started with attention, then laughter, then the feeling that someone out there still thought I was special. I didn't realize that was the beginning of my biggest mistake, the one that would eventually change everything. It began with a late-night message from Maya, innocent words that shouldn't have meant anything, but they did. "You seem quiet today. Everything okay?" That single line broke a barrier I didn't even realize existed. I replied without thinking, pouring out small frustrations I never shared with my wife anymore. One message turned into another, and before I knew it, she knew more about my emotions than the woman I had vowed to share my life with. I justified it as harmless honesty, just two adults talking. But deep down, I knew it was wrong. Our conversations became the highlight of my day. She laughed at things my wife no longer found funny, noticed details no one else did. She'd say things like, "You deserve to be appreciated," and I let myself believe it. It wasn't love, not yet, but it felt like oxygen after holding my breath for too long. The emotional connection deepened until one evening, after a stressful day, she said, "You don't have to keep pretending you're okay." I remember staring at that message for minutes before replying, "You make it easier to be myself." It was the first truth I had told in months, and the first betrayal. Days blurred. Coffee breaks turned into longer talks. The excitement of seeing her message felt intoxicating. My phone became a secret, something I kept face down around my wife. When she asked why I was distant, I told her work was overwhelming. That was true in a way, but not the whole truth. The guilt crept in quietly, but I kept pushing it aside, convincing myself that everyone deserves to feel alive once in a while. Then came the night everything crossed the line. It was after a company event, too many drinks, too many glances that lasted longer than they should have. She said goodbye, but I didn't want to let go. One look, one touch, and years of restraint dissolved into a single, irreversible moment. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even romantic. It was desperate, selfish, and fleeting, and when it was over, the silence felt heavier than anything I had ever known. On the way home, I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror and couldn't recognize the man looking back. My chest felt hollow, my hands trembling. I told myself it was just one mistake, that I could bury it, pretend it never happened. But deep down, I knew I had just destroyed something sacred. My wife's trust, my peace, and my own sense of who I was, all shattered in a moment of weakness disguised as passion. That night, guilt didn't let me sleep, and for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to betray not just someone you love, but your own soul. The next morning felt unreal. My wife greeted me with her usual warmth, completely unaware of what I had done. Her voice, her smile, everything that once felt ordinary now pierced through me like a knife. Every word she spoke reminded me of the secret I was carrying. I tried to act normal, but my guilt was visible in every hesitation, every forced laugh. Maya texted, "Are you okay?" and I couldn't bring myself to reply. The excitement that once thrilled me now felt poisonous. I had crossed a line that could never be erased. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between me and my wife grew. I blamed stress again, told her I just needed space, but the truth was I couldn't look her in the eyes without feeling disgusted with myself. She started to notice. The late replies, the hidden phone, the unfamiliar silence between us, it was all too obvious. Then one evening, as I came home, she looked at me with trembling hands and asked, "Is there someone else?" The words hit harder than any slap could. I froze. I wanted to deny it, to lie one more time, but my silence said everything. Her eyes filled with tears, not anger, just disbelief. That hurt more than shouting ever could. She whispered, "I trusted you with my whole heart." I couldn't say a word. The weight of her pain crushed me. In that moment, every moment of pleasure, every message, every touch with Maya felt meaningless. I wanted to turn back time, to undo everything, but the damage was already done. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal the same. The following weeks were a blur of quiet dinners, sleepless nights, and empty conversations. She stopped asking questions. I think she already knew the answers. Maya tried reaching out, but I couldn't stand the thought of her anymore. What once felt exciting now made me sick. She became a reminder of the person I never wanted to be. I ended everything with her, told her it was over. She didn't argue, just said, "I knew this would end badly." Our home, once filled with laughter, turned into a silent prison. My wife barely spoke, and I didn't deserve her words anyway. Every sound, the clinking of dishes, the rustle of her footsteps, was a reminder of what I had lost. The guilt didn't fade, it grew stronger each day. I had thought I was lonely before, but nothing compares to the loneliness of being surrounded by the ruins of your own choices. One night, I sat alone, staring at the wedding photo on our wall. Her smile looked the same, but the man beside her was gone. I had become a stranger to myself. That was the moment I truly understood what betrayal costs, not just the person you hurt, but the part of you that dies in the process. Eventually, the silence between us became permanent. She moved out quietly one morning, leaving only a note that said, "I hope you find the person you lost inside yourself." I sat there for hours, reading that single line again and again. There was no shouting, no dramatic goodbye, just emptiness. The woman who once held my entire world had walked away without looking back, and I couldn't even blame her. I had broken something that no apology could repair. The days that followed felt endless. The house echoed with absence. Every sound reminded me of her, the way she hummed while cooking, the way she laughed at her own bad jokes. I kept hoping she'd call, maybe to say we could try again, but she never did. I couldn't reach out either. What could I possibly say? "I'm sorry" had lost its meaning. I tried drowning in work, in distractions, but guilt followed me everywhere. It was there when I woke up, when I looked in the mirror, when I scrolled through old pictures I no longer had the right to keep. Months passed before I finally accepted that I had to live with the consequences. Maya moved on with her life. I saw her once at a cafe, smiling easily, as if what happened between us never existed. It hit me then how temporary that kind of connection really was, built on weakness, not love. She had been an escape, not a solution. The real problem was me, my need for attention, my inability to appreciate what I already had. I had mistaken excitement for happiness and validation for affection. It cost me everything that truly mattered. I started therapy after my wife filed for divorce. It was there I finally said the words I'd been avoiding. I ruined my own life. The therapist didn't judge me, just asked, "What did you learn?" I didn't have an answer at first. But over time, I realized the lesson wasn't about avoiding temptation, it was about understanding loneliness, learning to communicate before silence turns into distance. Love doesn't fade overnight, it gets buried under pride, neglect, and unspoken pain. If I had talked to my wife instead of seeking comfort elsewhere, maybe we would have survived. Now, when I see couples laughing together, I feel a strange mix of envy and gratitude. Envy because I lost that, and gratitude because I know what it's worth now. I still think about her sometimes, not with longing, but with respect. She deserved honesty, and I failed her. The biggest punishment isn't being alone, it's remembering how easily I destroyed something pure for something temporary. If there's one thing my story should remind anyone, it's this: betrayal doesn't start with a kiss, it starts with a conversation you shouldn't have. And once that line is crossed, there's no way back. I lost the woman who truly loved me, and I've spent every day since trying to become the kind of man she thought I was.